Hi, Greg and Amy. My name's Amanda. I have a question for you regarding visions of Mary. I'm a relatively new Catholic. I became confirmed Catholic when I married my husband, but was raised in a Protestant home and really honestly have my foot in two camps. But that's another story for another
Mm,
day. But over the last couple of years, there's been lots of discussion about when Mary reveals herself through like at the Magigoria or at different different places around the world, and I have always had a healthy skepticism when it comes to that. However, just recently in our own parish, there was a vision of Mary during the Eucharist, and someone took a photo of it, and it's striking. It is very clear it's Mary, and it has circulated through our church, and it's really um, quite remarkable. And it was in response to this young, uh, well, not young, like 30s-year old um, man whose father is quite ill. And this vision of Mary appeared during the Eucharist. It's like a reflection in one of the cups of Mary, and like I said, it's striking. It's perfectly Mary. So anyway, I got my wheels turning why Mary would reveal herself that way and why it wouldn't be Jesus. Curious to know. I know you're not Catholic, but curious to know if you have any insight. Thanks so much, Greg. Bye bye.
Thank you, Amanda. It's a great call. And it's a little bit difficult in some ways to navigate this because of the way that people characteristically think about these kinds of things, and from either side of the spectrum, whether Protestant or Roman Catholic. I was raised Roman Catholic, so I understand that whole environment. I was in the Vatican I tradition. I left Catholicism in the mid 60s, right around the time of Vatican II. I do not consider Vatican II to be an improvement on Roman Catholic theology at all. Nevertheless, I have background in that. My brother was an altar boy, and I grew up with Latin Mass. Okay, so like I said, Vatican I, Tridentine. All right, and I also have a picture that Amanda you sent of that reflection. That, as you put it, was your words were, "It's very clear it's Mary," or "It's perfectly Mary." All right. Um, I think the two extremes that people might fall off on, given the theological divide between Protestants and Roman Catholics, is that on the one side, if one can identify some supernatural element related to Mariology. Okay, Mariology would be doctrines related to the person of Mary in the Roman Catholic Church, that this somehow validates or justifies the doctrine. All right. On the other side, I think it's a mistake. It's not enough to say, well, look at this event. Thousands of people saw this apparition. There were these healings that were associated with Mary, this apparition identified as Mary, that we can quantify, we can document. Or here's a photograph. I got the photograph in front of me of the reflection. All right, very clear it's a Mary. Um, it's a mistake to say simply because there is some kind of miraculous manifestation regarding a claim that the claim itself is true. Okay? Theological claims need to be assessed through theological means. And we have that means. And the means that we have, the means of theological revelation to assess these things that both Roman Catholics and Protestants agree is authoritative, is the Bible. Now, Roman Catholics go beyond that. They say the Bible is authoritative. So is Holy Tradition. So is the councils that speak for the Church, and the Magisterium, and also the Pope when he speaks from the chair, ex cathedra. Okay, which actually happens rarely, but nevertheless, there are four different sources of inerrant revelation. But since we both agree on one source, the Bible, then that ought to be allowed to weigh in on some of these other kinds of things. And so that's what we're going to do. We're going to assess these kinds of things. I'm just talking about the methodology now. We're going to assess these supernatural apparitions of any kind, because there are all kinds of supernatural things that happen in Protestant circles that are meant to affirm certain speakers or faith healers or things like that. So all I'm saying right now is that it's supernatural is not enough to affirm the doctrine. Now, on the other side, I think the temptation is it's actually kind of the same error. It's the belief that if it's supernatural, it does affirm it. Therefore, we have to deny that there's anything supernatural happened. And I think that's a mistake too. Now, Matthew 24, Jesus talks about the future and that there are going to be false prophets performing signs and wonders to mislead, if possible, even the elect. In other words, it's going to be very persuasive. There are going to be supernatural things that happen that are inconsistent with sound theology that may mislead people. And it'll be very tempting even to genuine Christians. All right. Now, I'm not right now weighing in on these apparitions as falling in that category. I'm using the Matthew 24 to show that Jesus is warning us that supernatural manifestations are not enough to establish what is true. Okay. Really key. So any assessment that we make based on alleged manifestations has to be made from the text and not from the manifestation. That person really experienced it. There really was. Lots of people saw. We have television cameras showing it. We've got a photo of a reflection. That by itself is not enough. Okay. So let me go to the reflection for a moment because I have the photo right in front of me. And Amanda, the way you put it is, it's very clear it's Mary. Well, I'm looking at the photo, and what's very clear to me is it seems to be an image of a woman. I don't know that that woman is Mary, and nobody does because nobody knows what Mary looked like. It's just a woman. It's kind of interesting that when in near-death experiences, it's not unusual for people to see a person, an image of a person of light, all right? And when Christians have an image like that in a near-death experience, they immediately assume or they characterize that as seeing Jesus. That's Jesus. But when a Hindu has it, they think they're seeing Krishna. Now, I'm not weighing in on one side or the other about the legitimacy of near-death experiences. What I'm saying is our theology is going to influence our assessment. I have no reason to believe this image that looks like an image of a woman, as far as I can tell. I don't have a magnifying glass. I got a picture of it, but that looks like a pencil drawing of a woman. I have no reason to think that that's a picture of Mary. It's just an image of a woman. So that's one thing. We don't know it's Mary. Well, then why would that image be there? I don't know. There's all kinds of strange things that happen. Jesus in a taco kind of thing. And I'm not speaking disparagingly. These things have happened. There's an image of Jesus in the taco. And you have people that make a lot of that. Well, I don't know. There's an image of John Kennedy in the lava rock in Maui. If you look at it the right way, from the right angle, with the right light. Wow, it looks a lot like him. Now, again, I'm not disparaging it. I'm just simply saying that there are lots of strange things that happen that look like things, but why would we invest that image or whatever it is with theological significance? But that's what's done here. Oh, that must be Mary. I don't know that it's Mary. Just like I don't know if it's Krishna or Jesus that people see when they die. They invest. They interpret these things in light of prior considerations, all right? Um, if you want to know about Mary, the best thing to do is go back to the text and see what the text shows you. And it turns out when you read about this magnificent woman in the Gospels, you do not get the sense of the role of Mary in Christian life that the Roman Catholic Church gives to her. In fact, when Jesus, she wasn't. There was no evidence at all that she remained a virgin her whole life. That is a dogma of the Catholic Church. It is not a biblical teaching. The Bible teaches that Jesus had brothers and sisters, and one of those brothers was James, who wrote the book of James, or I should say half brother, to be precise. Oh no, well that must be a cousin. Well, there's no reason textually to call James Jesus' cousin when he's called his brother. It's only if you have a prior notion, a dogma, that won't allow Mary to have had other children, that forces you to interpret that passage in terms of cousin. All right? So the natural reading is Jesus had brothers and sisters. In fact, this is what people say. Look at, hey, this Jesus, look, he's making all these claims. We know his family. We know his brothers and sisters. He grew up here. Who is this guy who's putting on airs? Kind of thing. So that's the natural reading of these passages that make these references. And by the way, there's a point in which Mary and the brothers and sisters of Jesus come to get Jesus because they're worried about Jesus. And they say, your mother and brothers and sisters, they're all out. They want you to come out. And he says, who are my brothers and sisters? You are. And so he in a certain sense, he separates them himself from his own family. Now, he's not disparaging his own family, but what he's not doing is exalting Mary, okay, as the Queen of Heaven or something like that. So there is a tradition in the Roman Catholic Church. Now, I am speaking theologically here, and I'm assessing the tradition regarding Mary in the Roman Church based on scriptural teaching, okay? By the way, the idea that Mary was assumed into heaven, this, I think, is a late 19th century ex cathedra doctrine affirmed by a pope speaking from the chair. I could be wrong about the history of that, but there's no evidence at all scripturally that this is the case. And in fact, what we know about scriptural teaching is that all men die. Even Jesus died, for goodness sake. Now, can there be exceptions? Sure. It does seem that you have two assumptions. Elijah and who was the guy? Enoch walked with God, God can do whatever he wants. Do we have any reason to believe that happened to Mary? No. And what happens when you give that to Mary is it begins to exalt Mary above Jesus. And this is, I think, what has happened. And then it becomes natural to affirm those doctrines by looking at manifestations like this reflection in the glass as evidence that the doctrine that is extra biblical is actually sound. And I don't think it is, because yes, it is extra biblical, but it's worse than that in my view. It's not just it's contrary to the kinds of things the Scripture teaches, which puts Christ at the center. Look at the book of Colossians. It's all about Jesus at the center. Now, when I was in Italy and in Rome, and there's all kinds of statuary of Mary and Jesus, and Mary is always above Jesus. In fact, when you look closely at the statuary, the lips, these are bronze statues in many cases. The lips and the nipples, the breast of Mary are disfigured. Why are they disfigured? It's because people have rubbed the statue on Mary's face and on her breasts to get a blessing from the statue, or from Mary, presumably, by rubbing the statue. And over the years, it has actually defaced the image made of bronze. They rubbed the bronze off. Why is this happening? Because of a theology. So whenever there is an alleged manifestation of Mary that seems to put Mary in a position of primacy, especially with regards to Jesus. I have theological reasons to doubt its legitimacy. Not that it happened. There could have been a manifestation. This could be a perfect image of a woman displayed momentarily or whatever on that glass, but I have no reason to believe it's Mary. In fact, if it just shows up like that, what theological significance do we assign to it? We have no way to assign any theological significance to that. Now, what Jesus said, he was asked, by what authority do you cleanse the temple? He said, I'll show you my authority. Destroy this temple, and I'll raise it up again in 3 days. And the text then says he was speaking of the temple of his body, speaking of the resurrection. So Jesus is giving theological substance to the supernatural event that would come in the future. When he is raised from the dead, it shows what his authority is to do the things he did. If we just see an image here of a woman on a piece of glass sitting on the table there where the Eucharist is being offered and the Mass is being said, what are we supposed to conclude from that? We can't conclude it's Mary. We conclude there's a picture of a woman that is manifest in the light, in the reflection of that glass. And the theology that we conclude from it is what? There's nothing we can conclude. The theology about Mary is something we have to get from Scripture. And if it turns out that there's extra biblical revelation, that would be the different means of revelation that the Roman Catholic Church makes claim to, that is inconsistent or contrary to the teaching of Scripture properly understood, then the secondary source is not reliable. So that's my approach to these kinds of things. I don't see the only reason. Look, if there are, and again, I'm not saying this disparagingly. I'm just making an observation. There are lots of Roman Catholics that love Mary more than they love Jesus. And they've been told, like I was when I was younger, and I don't know if this is still part of the communication, that Jesus will listen to Mary because Mary's his mother. And so if you ask Mary to ask Jesus, then Jesus will do what his mother says on your behalf. Wait a minute, doesn't Jesus love me? Why can't I just go directly to Jesus? Mary is, do you see the implication there? And again, maybe people will say, well, that isn't what our church teaches. Well, good, I'm glad that isn't the case. But that is the message that I received growing up. And I think that is what a lot of Roman Catholics believe with regards to Mary. And I think their hearts are much more attached emotionally to Mary than it is to Jesus. Does that sound right to you? Oh, somebody say, well, you Protestants, you have your heart more attached to whatever, your sacraments, your practices, or the Bible rather than to Jesus. Well, if that's the case, then that's wrong too. Jesus shouldn't be supplanted by anyone because he is God in the flesh, Emmanuel, God with us, who came to rescue us. He deserves our praise and our worship. He is the preeminence of Christ. That's Colossians. He is the preeminent one. And anything that functions to supplant him is not of God.